Hello everyone, I am Mad Capper and this is another video on Raid Shadow Legends and another invite I built them so you don't have to series. Today we're going to talk about Baerdall Fellhammer. He is a Void Affinity Attack based champion of the Dwarven faction. Let's take a look at him. So here he is. He's got an interesting toolkit, but first let's talk about his starting stats. 18,330 is one of the best I've seen among epic attack champions for HP, which means you should be able to build him out pretty survivable. His attack, reasonable. It isn't on the higher scale. Typically, I like to see plus 1,500 around here, but 1,398 is certainly something we can work with. 683 is a very low number, but it's not really as bad as it looks, and we'll talk about why in a second. His speed at 94 is slightly below average. We would like him to be a little bit faster, but actually, this isn't really going to be a deterrent in how we've decided to build him out, and we'll talk about that as well. The final thing to note here is that he starts with 60 resist, which means there is an opportunity to make him a higher resist champion. While he is an attack-based champion, which means he probably doesn't have the sustainability and survivability to be a 600-700 resist champion, like some of the big Mountain Kings, that sort of thing, or Duchess, he will still be able to have enough survivability to stop those minor ones, like for example, a Trun to stun, or those sort of things from interrupting your gameplay when using him. That said, how we built him out is slightly different, where we aren't really taking the resist into consideration. When we talk about his toolkit here, he has a 32% attack aura in dungeons. This is actually a really good aura for attack-based champions in dungeons. It's one of the highest I've seen among the epics, and it's generally useful in the early to mid game on getting more damage if you find your team just isn't able to quite put out enough damage to kill or to speed up the runs. Unfortunately, his kit doesn't allow very good speed runs because of his attack animation, but it's still going to help overall. His passive here places a counterattack buff on this champion for one turn at the start of each round, and a counterattack on the end of each turn. This essentially means that unless it is stripped by a debuffer, he is going to have counterattack up 100% of the time. We are absolutely going to be using this ability in our build, and this is what we're going to feature around him to build him out. His two attack abilities are also really good. He's got a 3-hit A2 on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. This places a shield buff on the champion for the 30% of the damage inflicted for 3 turns. This actually helps some of the fact that he's got a low defense, because you're going to get a pretty good shield a lot of the times when you use this ability. His A1 is a 2-hit A1 that has a 30% bookable to 40% chance for a heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. This isn't something I'm extremely excited about, and I think it's a bit of a miss on this guy's toolkit. We have enough heal reduction champions. That said, I think I understand the theory behind this, and that's because his toolkit really lends itself well to fighting in the Firekeep, where a heal reduction is a great piece to have. Unfortunately, you're probably still not going to beat the Firekeep with just this champion alone, so you're going to be bringing along typically a Coldheart who has heal reduction on her own and needs the accuracy to make sure she can reduce turn meter on him as well. For that reason, I don't find this a great ability on this particular champion, and it is something that we'll talk about at the end of this video. As far as how I built him out, I did struggle with a couple of different builds. I originally built him out in Savage gear, almost identical to how I had the Phoenix built out, but I found that it just wasn't doing anything. The fact of the matter is, this is a champion that you actually want to go second. He's got an ability to counterattack anyway, so as you want him to take hits, be sustainable, and then counterattack, counterpunch until he wins the round. And that's kind of how I built him out the second time. What I actually did was I took Rhodos's gear verbatim and put it on this champion. Obviously, the accessories are a bit different, but this gave me a very slow comp, but one that can do the most damage possible with the gear I have. With this, he has 38,000 HP, attack of over 4,600, his defense at 1,600, 135 speed with 260 crit damage at 100% crit rate. He also still manages 170 resistance, mainly due to the Great Hall plus his innate 60 resistance. He has pretty low debuff accuracy, and that is intentional because we aren't really worried about him debuffing people with that A1. If he happens to land it, good. Otherwise, it's not really what we're looking for. Now, as far as where we want to use him, he is someone that can go in the campaign and farm for you. At about level 42, I was actually able to get him in for self-farming. This means he is the most efficient way for leveling him up if you're trying to get him up to 6-star 60, is to put him in good gear and just let him solo 12-3. This is what I did, and it worked very effectively, although it took about 45 seconds to get through the run. In this gear, it would probably take longer because he's even slower, so we're not going to actually show you and waste the time with it. Just know that he is able to farm efficiently in that dungeon, but he's not a campaign farmer. You're not going to want him to level food. It's merely for a self item when you're leveling him up. When we go into the actual dungeons, the best place to use him, and now we'll talk a little bit. Obviously, the Spirit Keep, because he's got that debuff. But honestly, when you look at these, the place where I think he's going to shine the best is the Fire Knight Castle. There's going to be cases and people that don't have a counterattack, they don't have a reliable reflect, and they don't have an Allure or a Lysandra, or I think there's a couple other champions that do that constant turn meter reduction to make it so the Fire Knight never gets to close that shield once you open it. If you're one of those teams, this can be a frustrating place to get through, and I think this is where this champion may be able to help you. So here's the Fire Knight team we put together to kind of showcase what he can do. In this case, we've brought in a Wave Nuker and Ethos, Res and Turn Meter Boost and Arbiter, a Cold Heart for the actual nuking damage ability on the Fire Knight himself, and a defense down and attack down in Madame Ceres. Stag Knight also works really well in this position, but because I don't have my Stag Knight fully booked, I decided to bring in that guaranteed or near guaranteed debuff. He himself, we were using as a lead. That way we can get that 32% ally increased attack, which is going to help Ethos, Coldheart, and him do plenty more damage. This is going to help speed the wave up a little bit because it is going to be slower that we're not using a double nuke or some sort of other thing to quickly clear the waves. Remember, this is what you're going to do if you don't have a Lysandra, if you don't have an Allure, you don't have a counterattack. When you consider that there's only about 6 or 7 champions that'll get you through this really quickly, it is always nice to have other options if you have to go through it in a slower, more methodical manner. So let's start the run, and then we'll talk about it once we get up to the Fire Knight, which is where he's really going to shine. Now that we've made it to the Fire Knight, you're going to see how his counterattack lends to be able to get rid of the shield. The first time we go through, we're just going to open it. We've got a lot of good abilities there. Ethos with his Relentless Gear procced off a little bit, and obviously Coldheart in the right turn order had gotten her a 1 off. But because we don't have any sort of turn meter manipulation, and to make matters worse, Coldheart misses her A3's turn meter reduction, the Fire Knight's going to close. And this is where people get into trouble if they don't have certain champions and certain comps. But we've already got 2 here, plus he's going to attack. So we're actually getting 4 hits on that shield every time. You'll notice every time that he closes that shield, we're going to get it open with pretty much ease. Again, I can't stress enough, he can't do it alone. He is giving you 4 opportunities. That's basically like having a 4-hit A1 all the time. But you still need other champions with him to be able to open the shield. And keep in mind that defense down and attack down are critical in making this a success. This round is already going to be a lot longer than some because of Coldheart missing her turn meter reduction. But if there was no attack down, this would take even longer because Arbiter would have to keep rezzing the champions. You see how Coldheart is almost dead. If you don't have that attack down, the Fire Knight wins. Also, obviously that heal reduction from Coldheart is critical. If you didn't have the Coldheart to do the turn meter reduction, the heal reduction, he would have it on his A1. So you could still use, with accuracy, you could use his A1 to be able to do the same thing. While we're not breaking any records, we got through in 3 minutes. He was able to do some pretty good damage, bring that shield down, help the overall team. Didn't do it on his own. You need that wave clear, but as part of a team, In these instances, he's going to be able to help a lot of you out there that are struggling in Fire Knight 20. Alright, as we take him to the arena, we're going to be using him in a slow comp. I've tested this in several different areas, and we're going to talk about where he succeeds and where he fails. This is a perfect opportunity to show you where his success will most lie. When the enemy has a hegemon, we have an automatic ability to counterattack. Because I've put him in immunity gear, he's actually protected from the initial kind of effects of that. So now that we've put him in there, their hegemon's nearly dead. Any one of my champions can probably one-shot and take him out. And as each champion likes to hit him, he's just going to make them punish. There we go. He has yet to take a turn, and he's already taken one champion down to half and killed another. This is absolutely... Look, here he goes again. And again, before he's even taken a turn, he just keeps doing work. The other part of him that's really good, if once we get this opportunity here, actually we probably don't want him to go. We're not gonna. Eventually we're gonna get to go with him. Alright, that's almost sad. This is the other part of his ability, and I think he's really good against Rotos. Now this will be a test because this Rotos is not debuffed, but still enough damage. That is on the low end. It did hit twice for about 26,000. That means it's got about 39,000 on that particular champion. Some of the endgame Rotoses are actually built pretty tanky. Also, if that Rotos had already stolen a couple of HP, then it might not have been enough to kill him, and that's something to consider. It isn't as easy to kill with him as it is with the champion that ignores defense. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a multi-hit, so it's got a better chance than any of those single-hit champions do. My final thoughts on this champion are this. If you need someone in the Fire Knight to improve your ability to consistently win, this is your champion. He has a toolkit that lends itself very well to defeating the Fire Knight, and for many of you who don't have counterattack, who don't have Allure, who don't have Lysandra, those sort of champions, this is definitely an option that's going to work for you. Keep in mind, you need someone to bring him there. He cannot get through the waves on his own. He is tankier than most of the kind of early game attack-based champions, but he does have a low defense score, so you're going to have to bring in some kind of babysitting, and especially someone that can nuke through the waves. It's unfortunate, but that is the way of some of the champions that have these special mechanics to them. They just can't deal with the trash waves, even if they're good on the boss. And that's probably the same for any of the dungeons. Because he's Void Affinity, he will probably work everywhere. I would even venture to guess you could find some way to use him in the Spider Dungeon. That said, also at the end of the day, he's probably not going to be your first option, and he's not a game changer in any of those dungeons. In the arena, he has the potential to be amazing. Unfortunately, he falls just a little bit short. In the examples we showed and many of the other test runs I did on him, he has always been really good against the Hegemon. He makes the Hegemon pay in a slow comp. Again, you need to build a team around him, which is a shield set team. However, that's pretty common against Hegemons. You have that shield set, he's going to counterattack, and he's going to do damage, and that's always good. He's also going to do damage against many of the other teams, but he falls short in two areas. First of all, his multipliers are not quite hard enough to one-shot enemies without defense down. That is unfortunate when he's got a 2-hit and a 3-hit that he still can't defeat other attack champions without that debuff. The other thing is, he is susceptible to being stripped. Anytime he loses that counterattack, he loses his strength. And that makes him pretty much useless. There are way too many Madame Saras, and especially in speed comps where they get to go first, it's really an unfortunate side effect. What I would do to make this guy more useful is quite simple. I would make two changes that would make him a game changer in most areas. First off, I would make his passive unstrippable. I would make this a permanent ability that you cannot take off through any means. The only way I would agree that he should have, just so you have something to counter him, is a block buffs. That way it's up for when you hit him with the block buffs, but then he can't reapply it when he comes to his turn. That would be an interesting way, but in any other thing, it wouldn't be able to be removed by any other means. That would give it a little bit more difficult, and people would have to pause before going up against this champion. When you have a Void Epic, that is what should happen. Enemy teams have to think when attacking this guy. That's all we can ask for, and that's what this would do. The other change wouldn't be on his A2, which I absolutely love. I think everything about this is amazing. It is a little bit low side on the multipliers from what I've discovered, but can still do the job against the enemy Rotos or enemy attack-based champions. This skill, however, doesn't make sense to me. I understand why they did it, because this guy is a Fire Knight specialist. However, heal reduction is widely available in this game. Everything from uncommons all the way up to legendaries have this ability, and there's plenty of other champions that they can find to do the same job. Instead, I would put an ignore defense. If he had a 50% or even a 25% ignore defense on his A1, with the rest of this toolkit and an uncleansable counterattack, he would be an absolute menace in the arena. He wouldn't be game changing because he's still attack based in an epic, which means he would be susceptible to being one shot by the enemy nuker. However, anyone who came ill prepared to deal with this guy would get punished, and that's the type of champion he should be. With those simple changes, I think he would be used a lot more, and a lot of people would consider building him up. As it stands, I'm going to have to recommend for most of you to vault this champion. For some of you who need that help in the Fire Knight or early game arena, need the kind of mechanic that this guy brings, he will absolutely help you. But for the majority of people out there, you probably have better options on a 4-man team. I hope this was helpful for you. Let me know what you think. Do you disagree with me? Do you love your Baerdall Fellhammer? What changes would you make? I want to thank you for joining me in this video. I appreciate you making it all the way to the end and supporting this stream. Keep in mind, I am also on Twitch TV/MadcapperYT. I do stream 3 to 5 days a week, and I hope to see you there sometime soon. I want you guys to all stay safe, be kind to one another, practice social distancing, and I'll see you in the next video.